It's a very funky tag, the type you don't take home to mother. It will never let your spirits down once you get it on your screen. It's the Mid-Year Freak. Mid-Year Freak. It's the Mid-Year Freak Out tag. Yow.
Do you like my spoken word? It's much better than my singing because it's monotone. I feel like everybody gets this tag wrong. Everybody is like grabbing their hair and pulling faces, and all their thumbnails are like, oh, I'm freaking out with that. And that's not how I freak out. This is me freaking out. Oh, I'm going to play that game with the blocks that you put in the hole. And, oh, outside. I wonder if there's a duck out there. Nah, ducks are assholes. They like rape each other. I wonder what the least rapey poultry bird is. I'm going to Google that. Turns out it's the turkey, by the way, just if you wanted to know. Not really sure. For all of you procrastinators out there that freak out by like literally counting the hairs on their big toe, I've got you. That's me. This is a book channel, just in case you haven't realised. I'm filming this on the 4th of July. I've read 132 books and I've DNF'd 42 books, which is just under 1 in 4. One of my aims this year was to DNF 1 in 6 books I began. To have that at 1 in 4 is actually wow. The aim for this is to see if it improves my reading, and I want to say that it absolutely has, because I've got 30 5-star reads. That's an incredible number of books. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I am on track for my goal of 250 books, but I'm not going to achieve it. I used to audiobook at work all the time, and I'm not going to work, and I'm not audiobooking anywhere near as much. If you're subscribed to Nell's new channel, if you don't know that Nell has a new channel, you should check her out and subscribe to her. She's going solo. There's an announcement video discussing all of the questions you might have about that on this channel with Nell. She discusses all of the reasons behind that and on her channel, so I'm not going to go into it other than to say that that will slow down my reading pace, but I'm still hopeful to read at quite a good click. I'm definitely still getting through a good amount of books. I would like to get through a little bit more than I'm doing, but figuring out my life in a big transition period, I don't quite know what's going to happen. Question 1, what is your best book for the year so far? I'm going to film a video talking about my best books for the year, but I will tell you that my absolute number 1 so far has been Honeybee by Craig Silvey. This novel starts off with 2 attempted suicides. A young male presenting person and an old man both go to a bridge to jump off it together at the same time, and they form this unlikely friendship. The child ends up being a trans woman, but they're going through quite an early stage of realization of what's going on. The old man is grieving the loss of his wife and doesn't really see a lot of point to continuing on living. I just felt really seen by one of the characters in this book. I definitely would have liked this book regardless. I think it's a well done, good, emotionally complex book that deals with toxic masculinity and transness and banks all wound together. I think it's a wonderful book. Absolutely love this book. I've got a review out on it and I will link it. Question number 2 is best sequel you've read this year. I always struggle with this because when I'm reading books in a series, I tend to go for really safe comfort reads. I quite enjoy the Jeeves and Wooster books. I quite enjoy Discworld novels. They're never going to be a highlight of my year, but they're always just a novel that I enjoy or laugh at. But I think my answer to this is The Past is Read by Catherine Valente. Now, I think this is slightly dodgy, but I think she has a book called The Future is Blue. I don't know if these books are related or not, but I feel like they are. Now, if you've not read Valente, you just have to. Valente is a genre-defying Douglas Adams, but so much more talented. This comedy, sci-fi, dystopian, little bit literary, really fun plots. This is an author for a lot of people, and The Past is Read is this dystopian world where humans have left Earth, but that some humans have stayed on Earth and they live in that, that giant section of rubbish that is the size of Texas floating in the Pacific. They live on there and they've started to colonize plants. And it's like this really brutal world that they live on. And this combination, a couple of authors have been doing it, where we have this incredibly brutal dystopian style world with like human suffering on a massive degree and like slapstick humor included. It shouldn't work. It really shouldn't work, but it does. It's fabulous, and it is just, when authors do those things where you don't expect them to be able to do something, this is one of those books. It is just an incredible book. New release that you haven't read yet but you want to. There's quite a few actually. Tish Delaney, The Saint of Lost Things. Livonia by Atesha Moshfegh. They're probably the two highest on my list of books that are out that I want to read, but they're only out in the last fortnight, so maybe that's cheating. Tish Delaney is an author I read last year before my actual heart breaks, and it's just this desperately sad novel about the troubles in Ireland and this woman's being forced into a role, and it was just emotional and tense and just the sort of misery that I like reading about. And honestly, The Saint of Lost Things sounds like it's quite a similar novel, which is just pitching to the converted, I have to say. Livonia, I think Atesha Moshfegh is an incredibly talented author, and I really admire an author who sort of takes a chance and does something different and goes into historical fiction. I saw Bob review this the other day and say that it was quite funny. Bob didn't give it a glowing review, but he did definitely talk about how funny it was. If Bob says it's funny, I definitely am instantly attracted to a book, because I think he's a good judge of comedy. It sounds like quite an offbeat, dark, you know what she's like. Biggest disappointment. A couple of books have been quite disappointing this year. Found Matrix by Lauren Groff really underwhelming. I've just finished Washington Black. I just thought that book was nothing. Winter in Socho, I just hated that book. It was the most pointless novel. My whole BookTube prize experience, that was a real disappointment. And a slightly more positive disappointment, I thought Alif Shafak's The Island of Missing Trees, I think it's actually quite a good novel, but after 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this world, which is knockout amazing, I was hopeful for another knockout amazing, and it just got an alright book. Biggest surprise. Australian literature has been my biggest surprise in general. Going into this year, I would avoid Australian literature. This year, I've read some absolutely amazing books from Australian authors. I've already spoken about Honeybee. Love and Virtue, I absolutely love that book. The Performance by Claire Thomas. Not even the sort of book that I normally like. It was just so well done. Meg Mason, I don't know if she counts as an Aussie. I mean, she's a Kiwi that's lived in the UK and is currently living in Sydney. I imagine she considers herself a Kiwi, but, as an Australian, it's, our colonial right to be able to take any successful Kiwi living in our country and say that they're Australian. I'm excited that I had written off Australian literature and I can see the sort of books that I like being published here now, and I just needed to look at it with fresh eyes. Favourite new author. I've got quite a few authors I'd like to mention here. Like, first of all, when you say, favourite author, I think a lot of booktubers have this same response. And, if you've only written one book, I'm not going to list you as a favourite author. I feel like it's very hard to do that. But there is one author that I hadn't read this year that I have read 2 books from that I just think is incredible. And that's Miriam Taves. I have read Women Talking and Fight Night. Both of these books were fabulous. After I did my Booker Prize prediction, I watched Gem of Books do her Booker Prize prediction where she predicted Fight Night was going to be on the Booker long list, and I was like, how did I miss that? It's because it was released significantly earlier in Canada than it was in the UK, so I didn't think it was eligible, but it is eligible, and I definitely think that's an amazing book. The other thing that's happened to me is prior to this year, I'd only read one Ruth Ozeki book, and I thought it was pretty bloody amazing, to be honest. I thought it was incredible. And now I've read 3 Ruth Ozeki books, and they are all... When I'm rating books, I have like 5 stars, this book is perfect or pretty close to perfect. And then I have 6 stars, this book, I don't know how you did it. I'm so impressed with this book. The book shouldn't be able to be this good. As I've gotten older and read more and more books do get into that 6-star category. But it's really rare for an author to have multiple books in there. And Ruth Ozeki has had every book that I've ever read in that 6-star category, which I probably, in my entire lifetime, probably only have 15 to 20 books. She's gone from an author that I knew I liked one book of to an author that she's now my favourite author ever. Newest fictional crush. People always struggle to answer this question, and when I'm reading like these emotionally tense books, I just love being able to just fall in love with these characters and just be on their side and like whatever they do, regardless of how flawed and messy it is. I feel like fictional crushes is a way of moorishly enjoying a book, and that if you don't get fictional crushes, you're probably missing out on an entire subset of fiction that you can just... Also, fictional crushes, they don't need to have a gender. This is words on a page. There's no gender. They don't need to have an age requirement. They don't need to have any thought of looks or anything. They just have to be somebody that you support. I think a perfect example of this for me is Martha from Sorrow and Bliss. She is such a horrible character. I completely understand why her husband left her. But geez, she was a likeable character. And so funny. I feel like Sorrow and Bliss is just one of these, it's clearly a divisive book, but if you hated Sorrow and Bliss, do you get fictional crushes? And if you liked it, do you get fictional crushes? Is there anybody that's missing out there? Is there a weird correlation here? Honestly, it happens once a month, and it's usually a 5-star read. Newest favourite character? I'm going to go for Hill from Hello Friend, We Missed You. This is the first 5-star book I read for the year. And this is another example of a fictional crush. Hill was suffering with grief from the loss of his wife, and his father was terminally ill, and he had a very messed up relationship with his father, and he's processing all of that, and he's clearly struggling, and he's not a particularly nice person, but you can see the factors in his life that makes him not particularly nice. And it's that struggle that he has that makes you root for him and like him. And I think that the way that this is written, it's written in such a unusual way. I really enjoyed the writing of this book. It really was able to get me into Hill's internal monologue and the way that he was thinking. And one of the things I mentioned in my review of it is that Hill repeats himself and then often changes what he says. Often you can see that sort of like spiraling, and you ever just like feel really depressed and then you say something like, oh, I want to kill myself or something like that, and you stop and you're like, no, why did you say that? I don't actually want to do that. I'm just having a bad day, and maybe I want to have a nap. And you see that he'll say these things and catch these things, and disordered thinking that Hill had, and the way that I thought was absolutely incredible, and he's such a brilliant character. A book that made you cry, and Mayflies by Andrew O'Hagan. I have a video, the saddest books I've ever read, and I talk about it in here. This book is brutally sad. It's about terminal illness, and it's about one man's promise to help another man kill himself. And I think that's all you need to know about it. It's Scottish, and I think Scottish literature is wonderful and really underrepresented. I want to know what Scottish books that you guys all read, because Scottish authors are some of the best in the world. They're one of the regions that I like to read books from. This is a good one, and if you don't cry in this, you're dead inside and possibly outside as well. A book that made you happy, Glory by No Violet Bulawayo. This should not have made me happy, but it did. It's a dystopian. It's sort of like Animal Farm in that all the characters in it are horses or parrots or whatever. And it's the tale of a fictional African country that is run by corruption and violence and war, and everybody's horribly mistreated and there's not enough food to go around. But it relentlessly takes the piss out of everything, and it is so funny. I did not expect it to be funny, but it's definitely the intention of the author to be funny, and it is a roaring success. I know that there are certain scenes you're going to laugh so hard, a little bit of snot's going to come out, and you're going to have to have a hanky and quickly deal with that, or you're going to be very embarrassed. The most beautiful book you've bought this year. I got this lovely hardcover edition of one of my favourite books ever, Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I mean, I just like it. It's got a little second hand, actually, but they only got 190 pages into it before they gave up. Why would you give up on Hardy? He's awesome. I think it's pretty, so I bought it. I've missed a question. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. I think that's a Booker Prize long list. I'm really looking forward to that coming out. But I'm also really looking forward to Milk Teeth by Jessica Andrews. Jessica Andrews is such an incredible author. Her first novel, Saltwater, was one of the best books I've ever read. It's an author that does it all. She does this wonderful characters, plot, and great setting. Language is brilliant, and all these wonderful themes. But what really stands out for me is how effective they are with their language, in that while she is building a character with one sentence, that sentence is also adding to this theme over here and this setting over there, and it's just so well constructed, and every sentence does that. It's just such a talented author, writing books that, you know, I just don't think that people should be talented enough to write them, but I'm so glad that they are, because I love reading them. What do you need to read by the end of the year? Need to read, I mean, I have cultures that I like to read books from, and I've been quite good at reading some of them and quite poor at reading others. So one of those cultures that I love reading books from is the Indian subcontinent, that whole Sri Lanka and Nepal and Bangladesh and Pakistan and that whole general area. I think that literature from certain cultures has different feels to it, and I think that some cultures work better for me, and India is definitely one of those regions that I really enjoy the literature from and I want to read more of. Similarly, Korea is another area that I would like to read more of. I also haven't read many classics this year, and I've got a few classics that I would like to read some of. I actually realised that the only Charlotte Bronte book I've ever read is Jane Eyre, and I would like to remedy that. I've not read a lot of Elizabeth Gaskell. The other thing I've really neglected is I have a lifetime long challenge to try and read a book from every country around the world, and I've sort of effortlessly been doing that for the last few years, as being on booktube and learning about books makes that incredibly easy if you're a little bit conscious of it. I need to be a little bit better at seeking out some books now, as I've gone a little bit off the path a bit. So that's my plans for the rest of the year. That's the end. Have we freaked out enough? The question that I love on this tag is, what is your favourite book of the year so far? I literally will click on a mid-year freakout tag just to see the answer for that question. Usually I'll watch the whole tag unless you're really offensive or boring or something. That's the question I like to hear answered a lot. So if you've not done a mid-year freakout tag, if you're a commenter, let me know what your best book of the year is in the comments section. And if you have done a mid-year freakout tag, let me know. Or just tell me what your favourite book is, either or. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.